Well, MK Party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndhlela joins us now for the reaction on the Constitutional Court's judgment on Zuma's eligibility to run for elections this year. Thank you so much, sir, for your time this afternoon. So, of course, we heard from the court this was a unanimous decision saying, in fact, that Mr. Zuma is not only not eligible, but also not qualified to stand as a candidate, ahead of these elections. We're 9 days away from the elections. What is your reaction as the MK?
Well, our reaction is that this doesn't change anything. President Zuma's face is still on the ballot, which is what we wanted to achieve. That was achieved. And we are going to continue to campaign for a two-third majority. And that further reinforces our position to ensure that we vote for a two-third majority to change this constitution. Remember, you have 10 individuals here in the form of judges. 60% of them, 6 of them, who would not recuse themselves. Naturally, the judgment that has now been handed down would be going against, the initial 15-month sentence that was handed down against President Zuma in the first place. So they are conflicted. And how is it possible that 10 unelected individuals make decisions on behalf of 62 million South Africans and effectively, infringing on their rights to choose who they want in the National Assembly? That's very telling in of itself, including the fact that 6 of them were conflicted.
You've won 2 other cases ahead of these elections, and you were very satisfied with those elections. You were satisfied in terms of how justice played itself out, during those processes. Now, the highest court in the land has essentially spoken. The rhetoric around, the fact that the judiciary is somewhat captured, and I'm saying my statements quite loosely, are quite undemocratic, would you not say? Particularly given the fact that we're 9 days, before the elections, and everything that you say, could, in any event, direct the course of action, particularly as it relates to your members.
No, President Zuma is going to continue to be president of MK Party. And like I said, if we want President Zuma to be president again, people must vote for a two-third majority so we can change this constitution. But for you to then say that we were satisfied, no, we welcomed the outcome because that's how it ought to be. In the same way we welcomed the Electoral Court when they, turned down the application of Section 47(1)(e) by the IEC to uphold an objection. So it doesn't change anything. If President Zuma feels that we should deploy someone else, then shall it be. Whoever it is that we deploy will still be guided by the wisdom of President Zuma. So it doesn't change anything. It means nothing for us right now. And people should not be concerned about that. And we believe that there's enough depth, but more so, this is, we've always said, is a spiritual process. What happens after the elections? You never know.
Now, you've, of course, had said words around the IEC and its independence. The court has actually just, maintained that the IEC, you've maintained that the IEC is operating outside of its mandate, particularly as it relates to, Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution. But the court, in fact, says that, the Electoral Commission is, in fact, does in fact have the mandate and the powers, around Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution, particularly as it pertains to candidacy, and we've seen that now. What do you say around that, particularly because you have to work very closely with the IEC, ahead of these particular elections?
Well, the IEC's conduct, as we've always said, has been one that is very concerning in terms of how they've conducted themselves from, regarding this matter, and questioned their independence. The fact, you're talking about candidacy here, and Section 47(1)(e) refers to membership of the National Assembly. So when we're saying jurisdiction, we're saying that Section 47(1)(e) applied in terms of membership. If the IEC, was not happy, which in this case the Electoral Court found that our position was correct, and then now obviously the Constitutional Court overturning that, is a different story. But the mere fact that it was taken to the Constitutional Court in the first place, we've always said, is a constitutional crisis in of itself. Because you found leaders there, or in the form of judges, who presided over a matter that they were conflicted over, because they handed down the 15-month sentence in question here. So why did they not recuse themselves? For us to then say that of course, not recusing themselves and handing down any other judgment would be, in effect, exposing themselves. Would you do that if you're a judge? No.
Interestingly, it was Judge Saron who, handed down this particular judgment. But just
no, 6 of them were there.
Just because we're pressed with time, of course, we now understand that on the allegations of bias as it pertains to Commissioner Love, Justice Saron found that those allegations were also unfounded, and in fact that there was no exhibition of bias in as far as Janet Love is concerned.
Well, what do you expect from people who themselves are conflicted to uphold an issue of bias when they are biased themselves? That's just the reality. I mean, what they're doing here is they're just correcting and protecting the decision that they've, not even correcting, they're protecting the decision that they took initially of sentencing President Zuma without an option of a trial.
There's a lot of expectation, and as far as your members are concerned, that by virtue of, former President Jacob Zuma's face being on that particular ballot, they want to see him in Parliament. What are your next steps? What are you going to be telling your members are going forward in as far as that is concerned?
No, our members should not be concerned. In actual fact, this reinforces our position that we must go out on our numbers and vote for a 2/3 majority to overturn this constitution and to change this constitution, which doesn't suit us.
How are you going to do that?
How are we going to do that? We're going to go out and vote in our numbers. That's just the reality. People want change. People want their president in the union buildings. And if that is the case, not just a handful of judges who will now try and determine their future and withdraw.
Well, that's not going to happen now. I mean, he's eligible to stand again in 5 years' time. So, I mean, after that sentence is over. So that's not going to happen now.
No, that's what you're saying. It's in 5 years now off the back of this constitution that needs to be changed. When we change the constitution, we can even institute a referendum if we wanted to. But if people, and therefore the majority in this so-called democracy, want President Zuma to be president of this country, that can be done by virtue of them voting for a 2/3 majority. And we change the constitution. What's wrong with that? You don't have to wait for 5 years. No. We can put President Zuma effective immediately. And it must be the people's will.
Very quickly as we wrap, now that of course, the Zuma will not be then standing and going to Parliament, what are you doing with your candidate list?
Again, that's your view, that he will not be going to Parliament. We've not even reached elections yet. Have we gotten a 2/3 majority yet? Not yet. So you can't pronounce that President Zuma is not going to be in Parliament. Wrong. We're saying that we'll vote for a 2/3 majority to ensure he gets into Parliament. I think that is as clear as day, unless if there's something that I'm not understanding.